One of our clients gave it to me last year.
A Labubu?
Yeah.
I'm so glad that I didn't invest in any of those. That was like the quickest market to ever like spike and then crash so fast.
That's what we're talking about today.
Market crashes. Actually, what we're doing today, boys. I got a special one for you. So as I was saying, this is something that's going to be entirely different than the episodes that I've done so far. So if you've listened, like we've had kind of like a discrete story or topic for the first four episodes. This one's not like that because this is the least amount of research I did into anything. I don't have a script ready for it. We're just letting Jesus take the wheel on this one. But I have a couple questions for everybody to start. So, Alex, you ever been in a satanic cult?
Not yet, but I was in the Flashlight Club when I was a kid.
That's close. That'll count. Steve, you ever seen a UFO?
No, I haven't. To the best of my knowledge.
Sailboat, you ever seen any weird rocks?
Oh, I've seen some weird rocks, all right. I don't know how weird we're talking.
And Josh, you ever seen a ghost?
No.
Because, boys, we're talking about all of those today. Today we're talking about the Bridgewater Triangle.
Yeah!
So hold up. I kind of figured that was going to happen because we have a Bridgewater Triangle resident. Rather long-term one. So hang on to that thought, Josh. But Alex, Sale, and Steve, have you guys heard of the Bridgewater Triangle?
Nope.
Negative. I have zero idea what we're talking about, actually.
Mm-hmm.
Is it like the Bermuda Triangle for Bridgewater?
Sort of,
Kind
but
of.
not really.
People go in, they
So-
just, they don't come out.
So we have a special guest, sort of. He didn't know it at the time until right now. But Josh, you are a long-term resident of the Bridgewater Triangle.
That I am.
What do you know about it?
So, the Bridgewater Triangle is kind of like the Bermuda Triangle where, like... Are we allowed to swear?
Yeah.
Okay. Kind of like the Bridgewater Triangle, the Bermuda Triangle where, like, shit gets lost. The Bridgewater Triangle is a triangular region within the South Shore. Bridgewater is kind of the middle of it, and basically like weird shit happens. There are like things called puckwudgies, which are like little gremlin creatures that people talk about.
Dude, I've actually heard of those,
Yep.
weirdly enough.
The Taunton State Hospital. So like there's ghosts and orbs and weird shit like that. It's basically just like this weird area that like it's not really weird. Like drive through it, it's like major highways and like, but
Yeah,
It also
495
consists of a
cuts
ton
right
of-
through the middle.
yeah, and 24. So like major highways, at least on the South Shore here. But it also consists of a ton of backwoods, like Dighton, Rehoboth are like there are probably more cows than there are people. So really woodsy areas as well, which is where a lot of this probably comes from.
I've never even heard of Dighton.
Yeah, same.
So we're talking about like almost to the Rhode Island border, but it's more down near Fall River, as far south as Fall River, as far north as Brockton.
Picture the corners of the triangle. You got Abington in the north,
Yep.
Freetown in the south, and Rehoboth in the west.
When I went to Bridgewater for school in 08, since 08, I basically haven't left. So I went to Bridgewater for 4.5 years. I came home from my ACL surgery for like half a year, but then moved to Abington. Then moved back to Bridgewater with Leah and her parents before we bought our house in Bridgewater. So since 08, so for the past like what? Holy shit, is that 18 years?
It's a long time.
For
Yo,
the
you've
past
been living
18
there
years,
just as
I've
long
basically
as...
been living here.
You've been living there longer than you've lived anywhere else in your entire life.
Yep.
Yep. So the reason why I wanted to do this one was, we've known each other, all 5 of us have known each other for a really long time. And the common thread with all of us is we grew up in Massachusetts. We're all Central Mass natives. And, we've done a fair amount of stuff in the woods in Massachusetts, but I didn't know this area at all. I've heard of the Bridgewater Triangle. I've heard all the stories, but I've never really done anything in this area before except drive through it. And I just thought it would be a fun thing to talk about all these weird things that have happened. And I went into this with a serious, non-ironic, I'm going to give this a shot. And I'll give you guys my kind of thoughts about where I ended up with this at the end. But it just got so ridiculous.
The only reason I know half these towns is because fucking Matt Damon and Ben Affleck just went through and named all of the towns and cities in Massachusetts the other day. I haven't even heard of half these places, and I grew up in Massachusetts,
Yeah. There's a bunch that I didn't recognize either. When we get snow day cancellations, the amount of towns I'd be like, I've never heard of that one before, and I just assume it's Northwest Mass, Satan's Kingdom up that area.
North Adams.
But I'll give you guys a little background here because I think it bears setting this up. And it's also a crossover for what I really like to do with this podcast is talk about history. So where the history of the Bridgewater Triangle starts is kind of where we frame all of our history, which is when the white people show up. So 1620, Pilgrims come over on the Mayflower, and they actually land on Truro, Race Point on the Cape. They don't land at Plymouth. And if anybody listens to this episode, if you go to Plymouth Rock for a tourist destination, congratulations. You just got the worst Massachusetts tourist trap ever. It's the biggest hoax. So they didn't even land there. It's not even the right rock. And they didn't get there first. It's the dumbest shit ever.
Yeah.
Dude, not to mention that the rock is, not even the size of my head.
No, yeah.
No,
the rock
fucking
is,
tiny, dude.
Maybe the size of your chest, and the real rock is, 100 feet out in the water because sea level has risen.
But the reason why I bring that up, so the Pilgrims land around Truro. That's actually where they moored the Mayflower first, and they started working their way around the Cape, north to south. So there's a beach in Eastham called First Encounter Beach, which is the spot where the Pilgrims first encountered natives. And they fucking shot at them, because of course they did. So the thing that the natives knew about white people and English settlers well before anybody ever showed up on the Mayflower. In fact, their populations had been decimated from English settlement leading up to 1620. The populations were down. I don't know the exact percentage, but they were on their way to extinction already, just from essentially disease. So more white people show up. They realize they're here to stay. As the English colonists work their way around the Cape and they decide to set up shop in Plymouth, they make contact with a Wampanoag sachem named Massasoit. Yep. So I'm sure you guys have seen that name. Absolutely. There's, I think, a state park. There's a whole lot of stuff named after Massasoit. So they link up with Massasoit, who sees this more of an opportunity. His idea is these fucking white people are not going to last very long. And I know they're not going to leave. And when they show up, bad things happen. So why don't I get ahead of this and maybe start a relationship here? And that's a very reduced way of looking at that, but that's a kind of essentially a paraphrase version of what happened. So Massasoit shows some compassion as well as also being a little clever. So another thing about native populations is they do not necessarily subscribe to the unifying theory of fuck that guy. And what I mean by that is the white people show up, they don't all just band together and say, fuck that guy, we're going to go get him. They have a very complex political structure within the different tribes and organizations. and there's a lot of hatred, a lot of warring. So this is an opportunity that Massasoit sees. He knows what comes with white people, which is normally bad. But he sees this as an opportunity to align so that he can get an advantage over, I believe it was the Narragansett. It was on the other, it's essentially on the other side of Rhode Island. So that's the early, like, 1620s, 1630s. This all breaks down in one generation with King Philip's War. And this is where the story of the Bridgewater Triangle starts. So I'm sure you guys have heard of the King Philip's War, but what do you guys know about it?
I don't know much. I've heard it, but
I
doesn't mean
know
anything.
I know King Philip's Walpole, KP Walpole, baby. That's what's up.
KP Walpole. It's KP Walpole.
KP Regional High School. Yeah.
Yeah, we used to play KP Walpole in sports.
So, as I was saying before, all of that progress that Massasoit and the English colonists made when they first made contact essentially broke down within 1 to 2 generations. So there was a growing, and again, I'm going to massively paraphrase this all. An inspiration for this podcast that I'm doing is a podcast called Lions Led by Donkeys. They do a whole series on King Philip's War. It's excellent. So if you guys or if anyone listening would like to know more about King Philip's War, I suggest listening to Lions Led by Donkeys episodes. They are great. So that's where I got a lot of this information. It's interesting for us because, like, we grew up in Massachusetts. Like, they kind of breezed right over this in school. Like, it's just kind of like, well, this happened, and then this happened. Oh, and then the American Revolution. And that's kind of where we started everything. So the lead up to King Philip's War was essentially years of breakdowns and mistrusts and essentially like walking back of certain agreements and certain things of the English colonists to the natives. Classic white people shit, right? So this built and built and built over time, and it was like this simmering, boiling thing, and it was a lot of tension that was building. And this essentially became the very first American conspiracy theory. And what I mean by that is that the English colonists started to believe that the native tribes were all banding together to wipe out the English colonists. And this was not happening. They had a total misunderstanding of how native politics worked. They just applied it to what they understood about English politics and the fear that they had over the native populations. And this just kept, it was like a snowball. Once it was going down the hill, it just started getting bigger and gaining more steam.
Sorry, am I supposed to say something as the token non-white person? Or
No, you get a total
might
pass.
work that way.
You get a total pass at all of this. So I don't.
Which also means you can make any comment that you want, and it's totally fine.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
For the listeners that don't know who you are, they should try to guess what your what your ethnicity is.
So essentially, tensions started to build because there were 3 generations of the main Wampanoag tribal leaders that, like, 3 generations essentially died. And with each generation that died, settlers tried to take over land.
Yep.
Exactly. So you had Massasoit, who obviously there's a lot of Massasoit stuff in the South Shore here. Massasoit State Park, Community College, a bunch of different parks. Massasoit died. His son, Wamsuta, took over, and then we all know the name Metacomet.
Metacomet.
As well, like just random history stuff. Like if you remember anything from like learning it at all, Metacomet's a big name.
So Metacomet is King Philip.
Yes. Think of all the tribal names that we know of just because we went to high school here and all of the casinos. So
Yeah.
you have the Pequots and the Mohegans, you have the Algonquin, the Wampanoags, you have the Pocassets, like
Narragansett.
just Narragansett. You just have
Nipmuc.
a ton of Native American town names that used to be tribes.
Yeah, exactly. And actually, I'll get into it here because there's actually a reference to Algonquin, not the tribe, but the language
Yes.
in this story here. So, as Josh was saying, Metacomet is the main character of King Philip's War because he is King Philip. That was the name that was given to him, the English name by the English colonists.
And they gave it
And
to everybody.
yeah,
The grandfather Massasoit they called Alexander.
Good,
yes.
good name.
So essentially, this was a boiling snowball of. Oh, that was the dumbest analogy ever.
I
But
was gonna say, man, if you got a
boiling
boiling snowball, we're talking water, baby.
I'm very tired and I haven't had a shower today.
I see
uh,
you're thinking about boiling water, huh?
I'm just jumping into boiling water. I might as well do that now. Um, but this is essentially a runaway train that's not going to be stopped, and there's a feeling I think on both sides that violence is coming. And to my knowledge, Metacomet tried everything he possibly could to avoid this, and it essentially came down to I can't anymore. There was too many agreements that were stepped on by the English colonists. There's too many things that they did to avoid this. But what kicked the whole thing off was something that happened without Metacomet's knowledge or approval, and that was the raid on Swansea. So the native warriors actually raided Swansea and just burned it to the ground, essentially. And this will become what happens throughout 1 year of 1675 to 1676, all throughout New England. And what Lions Led by Donkeys called it is it was an apocalypse because the King Philip's War was the costliest war per capita in U.S. history. They believe that about 30% of the English colonist population was killed in that 1 year alone. About 2,500 colonists, with up to about 5,000 natives dying as well. And we don't really know what that population like percentages on the natives, because like I said to start the whole thing, their population had been decimated for the past 100 years or 150 years because of English settlement and disease. So this was tit for tat raids on all these towns that you guys have all heard of. Like I think it was like over half of the established towns in Massachusetts colony at that time were raided and destroyed. Rehoboth, Swansea, Middleborough, Taunton, to name a few, and they were just going back and forth and back and forth. And for the better part of like the first half of the war, the natives were just Donnybrooking the English colonists. The English colonists could not compete with this. The natives fought like how you're supposed to fight a war. They played for keeps. Colonists thought they were trying to use European tactics, like kind of forming up and forming a line and using muskets and stuff. It's not how native warriors fought. Over the course of the year, the colonists changed their tactic and created a scorched earth policy. They started burning all of the crops, burning all the villages. They would go on raiding parties just into the woods and kill every living thing they possibly could to starve out native populations, and this worked. They just strangled the natives into submission. At the end of this, Metacomet was hunted down and killed. His body was then drawn and quartered, and his body parts were strewn about Plymouth Colony, and his head put on a pike at Fort Plymouth for 20 years. The successor to Metacomet was a man named Anawan. Anawan surrendered after being hunted down by Benjamin Church at Anawan Rock. So remember in the beginning I was like, you ever seen any weird rocks? We're going to talk about some weird rocks. Anawan Rock being one of them.
I love rocks.
You would. But Anawan surrendered under the guise of like, I'm surrendering. I'm afforded some parlay here. And they confirmed his treatment. There was an understanding that he was surrendering. He was then subsequently executed, drawn and quartered, and had his body parts strewn about the Massachusetts Bay Colony. Right? So when I
What
talk
is it
about
with
this
these
being,
guys and like hanging up body parts everywhere, man? That's fucking
That's
brutal.
what they did.
Big
dude,
statement.
It was a sign of like, don't come here, or this will happen to
mm-hmm,
you.
exactly.
I've tried that with like little moths and like flies. It doesn't work.
Oh, they just keep
Stay
coming.
away.
You just got to find a spider and throw it in the web so you can feed the spider and get them to grow.
So, the legend of the Bridgewater Triangle starts here, which is at the end of King Philip's War. So, supposedly, the area was cursed by Metacomet or potentially Anawan because of the mistreatment that the colonists were showing to native populations. There's another story that when Anawan surrendered, he had on him a wampum belt, which was signifying that he was the sachem. He surrendered this to Benjamin Church, or perhaps Benjamin Church took the belt when Anawan surrendered, and the belt subsequently disappeared from recorded history. So there's another theory that the curse was bestowed upon the Bridgewater trial area until the wampum belt is then returned.
I'm so happy we got around to why it's now a triangle. I think.
So the reason why they call it the Bridgewater Triangle is because of the density of weird shit that has happened in this particular area. It's not actually a triangle.
No, it's just a general area.
Sure.
It's the general area. Yes, it's the general area. If you start like heat mapping all these sightings of puckwudgies and Bigfoot and
Floating
giant
orbs.
snakes, floating orbs, ghosts, UFOs, there's a weird density of it in this area, right?
But I guess the Bridgewater general area doesn't sound as sexy as the Bridgewater Triangle.
Yeah.
Can we
Yeah,
pull up
exactly.
an image of a puckwudgie?
Oh,
What-
dude, they're so cool looking. They're
What is a puckwudgie again?
PUKWUDGIE.
A puckwudgie is a Native American cryptid. It's a creature from Native
What?
American
They're just
lore.
little. They're like little gremlins.
Little trolls.
They're like little
Nice.
mischievous. Like they'll go in and like steal your animals and like all sorts of shit.
Yeah. So the natives said that they would like cause misfortune and mischief,
Yeah.
and like they were just these little annoying assholes.
Yeah.
But when white people got a hold of, they're labubus.
Just ugly labubu's.
But when white people got a hold of this legend, they turned it into demonic. So we'll get into the sightings of the puckwudgies, but where I want to start is perhaps the hotbed of all this activity, which is the Hockomock Swamp.
Yep.
So the Hockomock Swamp is this area that goes between Bridgewater and Easton and a little bit of Norton and Taunton that the Wampanoag and specifically King Philip used as a staging ground and hideout during the war. And this is actually really, really smart. That area is very dense. It's very hard to navigate. I don't know if you guys have ever wandered around the woods and come to a swamp. It sucks. I've been caught a couple of times in swamps hunting, and it sucks when you realize like I'm stuck in a swamp. Like if you go too far in and realize like I can't really go back, I can't really go forward. So they use this area to hide out in and also to launch raids from because they knew the colonists couldn't get them in here. But this is kind of the epicenter or the beating heart of the Bridgewater Triangle. And Hockomock actually comes from an Algonquin word that's defined as places where spirits dwell. And it is kind of a creepy place. Going to the swamps is a little unsettling. And so Josh was talking about like spirit orbs. I think they call them, what do they call them? I had it written down. Spook lights.
Yep.
So seeing spook lights that follow streams that seem to be sentient, that seem to understand that there are people around, or maybe signaling phantom fires where people have like campfires that when they approach them, there's nothing there. There's no smell. There's no heat. There's no fire. And then they'll like walk back and they'll see it again. Phantom drums. So around Anawan Rock, there's been legends that you can hear drum beats, things like that. This is all around in the Hockomock Swamp area.
Bridgewater State University sits like on Hockomock Swamp technically. Like it's in the swamp area. So my house is actually in the swamp area. We're right next to Carver Pond, which is one of the ponds that is associated with the Hockomock Swamp. And Carver's Pond is like, I think, a half mile from my freshman dorm, and we'd always walk down to the pond at like 10 o'clock to smoke weed.
I was just about to say, it sounds like a great place to smoke some pot.
Oh yeah, 100%. Freshman year, you just go smoke weed off campus and walk back, and they're not I don't believe in this shit, but there's definitely weird shit that happens. Voices. I have seen floating orbs, and I logically try to attribute it to oh, there's probably a house over there.
I'm out in a swamp smoking weed.
Well, so there are
maybe that.
It could also be that.
Where I was, there were houses there. It was logical to that there because there's a couple roads that kind of creep into that area. But it's just weird shit.
So Josh, ever seen any weird shit in the Hockomock Swamp? Yeah. The other one here up on the map is Lake Nippanicket. So there's a whole the Nip. There's a whole mess of stories of other weird sightings around the Nip. This is kind of the hotbed of the Bigfoot sightings.
Yep.
So the primary source that I got all this information from was a YouTube documentary by, I believe it was called the Bristol County Media Company, that did a documentary on the Bridgewater Triangle. It's actually very well done. It's a legit one where they interview people that have studied this area. They have a lot of primary sources, mainly like newspaper articles. So there's well over 100 years of, I'll call it, documented things that have happened in this area that have made it into police reports, newspapers, journals, things like that. And they show that all in there. And the Hockomock Swamp and Lake Nippanicket are two massive hotbeds for this. But where I start getting into this is just fucking bullshit is when they interviewed the guy that was I forget the name of his expedition force, but he claims to have seen a Bigfoot on Clay Banks, which I don't know exactly where Clay Banks Pond is, or Clay Banks is, but
If only we could look it up.
yeah, it's just super slow.
That's
Is it this?
So this is
Thank you
new.
for saying that. That was wonderful.
This is all news to me that there have been Bigfoot sightings in Massachusetts, or alleged. I did not realize that at all, so
agree.
that's kind of wild.
Foz. See the residence inn at the southern end of the Nip there. Scroll
Yep.
in. There's a road off to the side of it where the Home Depot is. So if you take that's Lakeside Drive that kind of runs north, and then there's at the top of it there's a little loop-de-loop. You see that? That little loop-de-loop at the end. There's one house, and the town of Bridgewater ended up buying that house and the land because they just fucking did, because it sat vacant.
Wow, that is quite the property right there. That's kind of freaky for sure.
It was something like 50 acres or something in the town, and the town bought the house and 20 acres of it. But there's an island in the Nip. There are people that say that they've witnessed a Bigfoot on the island, viewing from that area, and then they've also witnessed the Nip is deep. It's not shallow, but they've witnessed a Bigfoot walking, essentially what would look like us swimming, head bobbing and stuff, but walking from the point of the island to the shore.
How big of a lake is that?
It's pretty big. It's pretty big. It's it's bigger than the Hopkinton State Park.
It's bigger than Hopkinton State Park?
Yeah.
Oh, that's a good size. That's a real good size.
Yeah, it's actually it's a recreational hotbed in terms of kayaking and fishing and things like that. And they cited that the Nip is also part of the Bridgewater Triangle because there's so many disappearances, there's so many people that have drowned in the lake. But this is like the Bermuda Triangle theory, right? The reason why, or in my opinion, the reason why the Bermuda Triangle has as many plane wrecks and shipwrecks and everything is because it's one of the most trafficked areas in the world. It's just statistics.
Yeah.
When you have more planes, more boats going in the air, you're gonna have more accidents. So it's the same thing with this kind of lake. There's a lot of people that spend time out on Lake Nipponicket, and here's where I'm at with fucking Bigfoots in Massachusetts, right? So go back to what Josh was saying where he was walking me into Lakeside Drive. He's like, yo, go to the Residence Inn. All right, now go to the Home Depot. It's like there's no fucking Bigfoot around where there's a Home Depot. You know what I mean? Like, it's
Yeah, Bigfoot's got to do his house renovations too. You know what I'm saying? Like, he's got to go somewhere for it.
There's a lot of weird shit too. So like across the road, so on the roadside where the Residence Inn is behind there. So that's all swampland, obviously, because we're in the Hockamon Swamp, and the town of Bridgewater keeps trying to zone it for commercial, so that way they can build and get tax revenue. But there's a bunch of old historical foundations that they won't rezone it commercially because there's old historical foundations and stuff, and like there's a bunch of testing that has to get done, and a couple of the foundations are like massive, and they're like, this doesn't look like it's for like a normal human. And I'm like, it could just be a fucking massive foundation. Like, what are we doing here?
Dude, I'm gonna go in the Hockamon Swamp and listen for tree knocks.
I'm staying away from that place. Wait, is this helping? Is this causing all of this causing the real estate prices to go up or down over there?
I'll tell you, in Bridgewater, it doesn't make a fucking difference because our water's trash. Our water can't stay clean because they keep building houses, and our infrastructure's decades behind.
The fucking Sasquatch keeps shitting in the lake, dude. Keeps polluting our water.
Another thing that contributes to a lot of the lore behind this is the fact that the university's on site. So every year you get like freshmen that move in that are like, oh, like people have said they see orbs in this building, and then they like start looking for it, and like it just becomes this like.
And they're all smoking.
Yeah, well, it's
I mean,
Actually,
especially
along
now that
these
it's
days,
legal
they're
in
probably
Massachusetts. You know, when you went to school, it still wasn't legal in Massachusetts.
Well, in today's
So,
day,
dude,
you're probably goofing some weird substance.
you just gave yourself up to the feds, man. They're gonna come searching for you now.
So I wanna kind of capture one thing that Josh was saying there. So if we back up a little bit, I know we're kind of all over the map here. So we got 5 best buddies just yapping over each other on this episode. So anybody listening to this, Josh is a graduate of Bridgewater State University, which is inside of the Bridgewater Triangle. He's also a homeowner inside of the Bridgewater Triangle. So what he was saying was people in Bridgewater State have like seen orbs and things like that, and then it just becomes like, oh, I heard so and so saw this, and then it just becomes like a thing that takes on a life of its own. So that was a recurring theme in this documentary that I watched, specifically around paranormal activity. So on this graphic that I have up here, in the lower left-hand corner, you see the red-headed hitchhiker. So this is a prime example of Bridgewater Triangle lore. So the red-headed hitchhiker supposedly shows up on Route 44 on the Seekonk-Rehoboth line. At night, if you're driving alone, driving with other people, sometimes this red-headed hitchhiker will be like imprinted on your windshield or will be on the side of the road. Sometimes he shows up in the car with you and fucks with your radio. But multiple people on this documentary, and this is why I feel this documentary actually did a really good job, was when they were interviewing these people that have studied the Bridgewater Triangle. I think there was at least 3 different people that cited the red-headed hitchhiker as one of these myths that was like, oh, my brother's friend's cousin's aunt saw this like 20 years ago. Nobody has a direct connection per se to the redheaded hitchhiker. It's all this folklore that is just passed down second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth hand.
You have to remember also the demographic of people that live in this area. South Shore, Massachusetts is like what we're talking Bridgewater South. So Bridgewater, Taunton, Berkeley, Dighton, Rehoboth, Seekonk. We're talking massive populations of like old school Portuguese, old school Portuguese who like are conspiracy theorists who pass stories down from generation to generation. We're talking like 95-year-old Portuguese grandmother who's like telling her kids, I saw this here at this time, and then like it just gets passed down. And not to bring politics into this, but this is the reddest part of Massachusetts. This is the most Republican. This is the part of Massachusetts where like education goes to die.
I was gonna shit all over Fall River and Taunton in this episode because it's just fucking nothing redeeming about Fall River and Taunton.
Nope. Where we grew up in Central Mass, science, math, STEM was king. Here, sports. You're good at sports, you kind of do well. Or like, if you're good with your hands, if you're a blue-collar person, you typically do well. Not really much else.
Well, there's a lot of stories from the Freetown Fall River area that have to do with satanic cults revolving around prostitution rings. But let me see where we left off. So we're kind of on the cryptids right now. So we've talked about Bigfoot. There is at least one police report about a Bigfoot sighting in this area, and the cop claims that this is like in the 70s that a Bigfoot actually lifted the back of his cruiser when he was like parked somewhere. I don't know, man. You want to know who doesn't see Bigfoot? Hunters, people that actually spend time in the woods. That's kind of where I'm at with Bigfoot. But there's another cryptid famous to the Hockomock Swamp area, and those are the thunderbirds. Yeah. These are birds with 12 to 20 foot wingspans, these massive pterodactyls that just patrol the area, right?
So stupid.
Another one cited in the 1930s by the CCC, so I wish I'd looked this up beforehand because this would have been a nice little historical tie, but during the Great Depression and during Roosevelt's New Deal, the CCC, I think, was one of the organizations that went out and did like these government-funded jobs, and they were working the Hockomock Swamp, and a few guys had gotten scared out of there because of seeing snakes the size of, quote, stovepipes. That one, I'm a little more inclined to believe, because if you're stomping around in the swamp in the 1930s, this is still 1930s Massachusetts. I don't think the population has really exploded like it has over the last 50 years or so. There's probably a couple big ones in there. There are snakes in Mass. It's not a lot, but they are here. But now, this is where, with the cryptids, this is where we get into ones that are actually recorded. There's actually newspaper articles about these next two. So one is called the Mansfield Mystery Cat. And this was cited in 1993. It's actually in a newspaper article where someone saw a cat that was, quote, the size of a Great Dane that was around the area of Mansfield and Easton. And there were multiple people that saw this thing, and it's just like kind of patrolling the area. Later on in 1993, a headless carcass of an African serval was found in Easton. So we're talking the same year. But this was quickly dismissed as not being the Mansfield Mystery Cat because the serval was too small and not the right color. So the serval is kind of like a cheetah. It's like kind of yellow with black spots.
Servals are badass. If I remember correctly, John Jones actually had a serval that I met. And it was one of those things like you couldn't go close to it or pet it or anything. Like it was kind of dangerous to have in the house.
The Mansfield Mystery Cat, I remember them equating it to being like a jaguar or a panther size. So like It could have just been a dog.
It's a good transition, Josh,
Yeah,
because
giant dogs.
yeah. So
So,
there's another newspaper article from Abington in 1973 that cites a giant killer dog that got into somebody's yard in Abington, and this guy came out and witnessed a dog that was the size of his ponies. So I don't know if I've ever really been up close to a pony since I was a kid, but ponies are not necessarily small. And this dog was actively ripping the throats out of these ponies, killed the guy's ponies in front of him. He retrieved a gun, fired at the dog, missed, and the dog took off. So, over the next 2 weeks, that homeowner and other residents from around the Abington area actually formed search parties and went out in the area looking for this dog to try to kill it, and they never found any sign of it. But again, this is cited. This is in the historical record in a newspaper article that something killed these ponies. Whether it was
Insurance fraud. Insurance fraud. His show ponies
It
were
only makes the
not
most
really
sense.
up to snuff, and he was just like, you know what, I gotta cut my losses. I think I can make some money off these ponies. Probably accidentally shot one of his ponies when he was shooting the dog.
He was actually just really drunk one night. Ah, shit, man.
maybe.
so that house where that guy reported it was like probably 5 streets away from where I lived when I lived in Abington. It couldn't have been a wolf. I know there are technically no wolves in Massachusetts right now, but a wolf is that size, right?
So this is interesting because of the one documentary that I watched about how the Pilgrims worked their way from Cape Cod to mainland Mass and kind of how they set the Plymouth colony up. They did little patrols into the wilderness in Massachusetts because at the time it was just overgrown wilderness. So they would kind of penetrate a little bit and come back and go a little further and come back. And there's journals, not necessarily like historical record, like official record. It's more just journals that these colonists kept about seeing giant dogs in the area. So I do believe that, but this is back in the 1620s. So it makes sense. Like this is the type of environment. Like coyotes are rampant
Oh yeah.
in Massachusetts now. Like during COVID, coyotes were wandering around friggin' Cambridge. You know what I
I
mean? Like,
I have like 3 in my backyard every day right now.
yeah, coyotes are pretty small. They're not very big, but can they get to the size where you confuse a coyote with a larger dog? I think absolutely.
I mean, I've seen a couple of them that
Yeah,
are like the
absolutely.
size of huskies for sure. So
Oh,
like, I
definitely.
mean, they're
I have a couple that are
most of the
in my
time.
backyard that are like lab size.
Yeah,
Yep.
that's crazy.
So, whether or not this was a super aggressive coyote or potentially rabid coyote or another cryptid of the Bridgewater Triangle, I don't really know.
Okay, so I had to look it up. Between 1987 and 96, there were 4 instances of wolves attacking humans in Massachusetts.
No
So,
shit.
and since the 70s, there have been several instances of bold or aggressive behavior towards humans in the Algonquin Provincial Park. So, wolves were synonymous with Algonquin folklore, which makes me think that obviously they had a pretty big presence here in historical sense. And obviously they're not here now because they've migrated north over time. But I would imagine it's a pretty logical thing to think your pony didn't get bitten by a giant fantastical dog. It might have just been a wolf.
I do believe that this account did happen. I do believe that somebody in Abington had ponies killed in front of him by a canine creature, whatever that was. But I do believe that this is actually a true account. That kind of makes sense to me.
100%.
And then we get to the Puckwudgies.
I just ran a chat GPT on Puckwudgies, so I'm very excited to discuss this.
That's cool.
These goddamn things. So, my first watch of this documentary on the Bridgewater Triangle, this guy, I can't remember his name, and I'm going to kind of shit all over him right now because he had a rather harrowing account with running into some sort of creature while he was walking his dog in Raynham. However, this guy can't be trusted. A, because he was wearing a leopard print fedora, and he called Raynham Rayham. So
Rayham. Puckwudgies, the thing that I think about when I think of a Puckwudgie, if you've seen Harry Potter, the house elves, that's like that is what I think about as like a quintessential Puckwudgie is like the creature or Dobby.
But with like porcupine quills and a bunch of these.
it's the bankers from Harry Potter.
The Puckwudgie, like the whole thing behind Puckwudgie is like, so on the screen, that's like what their form is. But Puckwudgies, they're mischievous little creatures, but they're quote unquote shapeshifters. And they can shapeshift into like porcupine-like creatures, which I would imagine the one holding a bow and arrow on the right hand side here.
If you get the chance, you should watch the video, the TikTok that I sent in the group text message. It's a really entertaining little video that talks about like the shape shifting abilities and how it just disappears, and like it once was helpful to the humans, but then they disrespected, so they turned on us or whatever. It's pretty wild stuff.
Yeah. So the photographic evidence that this documentary cited as a Puckwudgie, in my mind, was a fucking pine. I've seen a porcupine up close once before. They are a lot bigger than you think they are.
Puckwudgies, they're just like anamorphous porcupines.
It's like somebody got stuck halfway in the transition in their Animorph stage.
Yeah. They're like half trolley, half porcupiney.
So, what I was saying about this guy in Raynham and why he can't be trusted is he had a leopard print fedora and he called Raynham Rayham.
Rayham.
But
Rayham.
his account was, he came across very sincere. So if this guy saw something, I kind of feel bad for him because this would have absolutely made me shit my pants. But he said he came across like a 3-foot creature that was standing underneath a street light, and he was just walking his dog, and his dog started freaking out before he saw the creature, and then the creature started like holding a hand out to him and was going like, "Come here, come here, come here." It was, he said, quote, like beckoning him, and he didn't get any closer and took off back to his house. So whether or not this guy ran across a Puckwudgie or something else, but I don't know.
Part of their mischiefness is luring people to their death. I could see that, like putting your hand out and being like, "Follow me."
Yeah, and
Stab, stab, stab.
if some little 3-foot creature with a smile on its face was going like, "Come here, come here," I wouldn't go near it.
Yeah, not if it had quills coming out of its back.
No.
I think curiosity would probably get the best of me. I think I'd probably follow the shit out of it and just end up dead. To be completely honest with you.
That would happen too.
Yeah, more than likely, but.
But you've seen like humans in general just have this urge to go pet random wild creatures despite not knowing anything about them.
Yeah.
So I feel like Sale's actually not in the minority there.
I've seen that. I've seen people pet deer before. We were up in Pittsburgh, New Hampshire, And on Route 3, which is the Kankamakis Highway, where they call it Moose Alley. So we were going moose watching because they come out at dusk and you can kind of see them. It's awesome. But there was a car stopped on the road and we could see a deer like next to the car. These fucking idiots got out of the car and were like petting this deer that was like on the car. I was like, you guys gotta be shitting me. I was hoping to God this deer would just run them over. But it's one of my favorite things to watch is the people that go to like Yellowstone and like
Pet the fluffy cow.
yeah, they try to take selfies
Fucking
with
idiots.
bison and get run the fuck over.
Fucking idiots.
Exactly.
Things 3 times your size, has horns. Yeah, go pet it.
You guys want to talk about UFOs in the Bridgewater Triangle?
Seriously, more?
Oh. We haven't even got to the weird rocks and the Satanic Cults yet.
We got to get to rocks. I love rocks.
Us on the South Shore. We're a weird people.
This is where my bullshitometer kind of went off about the UFOs. So there's multiple UFO sightings. Again, in the historical record, in newspaper sightings, this is kind of a known thing to police in the area. So what's... Alex, I'm going to mute you while you're friggin' eating.
Nom.
So don't you take yourself off mute.
He's over here eating.
I'm the
I have a
captain
separate
now.
mute button on my headset too.
Oh my god, I'm playing Mute Fight with Alex right now. It's so annoying. But one thing that was interesting about this documentary, one of the guys that they interviewed was doing like legitimate research into this, like actually going to the areas, interviewing people, and he was approached by I believe it was a Norton cop. And he goes, I was honest with him. I said, this is what I'm doing. I'm researching the Bridgewater Triangle. This is what I'm looking for. And the cop took it seriously. And he's like, hey, let me show you this. Like, I'll take you to this area where a lot of this stuff has happened. So this is like kind of a known thing with law enforcement in the area as well, which also kind of made my hackles stand up a little bit. I was like, oh, if the cops aren't just shrugging this off, like they must get a lot of calls, and especially like in the 1970s, they say the late 1970s was a hotbed of activity for UFOs specifically in the area. But the place was the Raynham Dog Track, so that's where they've seen most of these UFOs. And the common one was they called it a home plate shaped, so like a 5-sided shape that they saw hovering. It was massive. They said it was like hundreds of yards long and hundreds of yards wide. And it was 2 news reporters. So these guys were going out to do a separate story. And both of these guys saw this home plate shaped object and reported it. And their recounting of their story, again, this is something that kind of felt sincere. One of the reporters legitimately was like, look, in the Air Force, I've never seen anything that we had that looked like this. Like, I don't know what I saw. I just saw it. And he kind of chalked it up to that. But where I went like and started laughing was, I believe it was like 2008. Some guy recorded a UFO around the Raynham Dog Track area of like a floating orb. He like zoomed in. I don't know if it was a cell phone camera or like a digital camera, but you could tell it was like really, really zoomed in. And it was this floating orb, kind of, like flashlight colored circular shape. But then if you look, there's a green light and a red light on either side of this orb. It's fucking navigation lights. It's a plane. Like,
Yeah.
like, come on, guy. Like, I don't know. Like, to me, that's like, did they send up a drone, before we were really all kind of aware of what drones are 20 years ago? I don't know, man. But, like, you can clearly see in this video there's a red and a green light. There's navigation lights on whatever this thing was.
There are a bunch of like small little airports in this area. So Mansfield has an airport right next to the Xfinity Center, Great Woods, whatever we call it, way back when. East Taunton has like a literal grass airfield. Um, there like there are just a ton of little airfields and like small airports in this area that anytime someone's like UFO in the South Shore, I'm like, it's a small plane.
Yeah, that's where I chalked that up to. But now we got to move on to rocks. We're getting into Chung Daddy's wheelhouse here.
Yeah.
So another defining feature of the Bridgewater Triangle are a bunch of weird mystery rocks that are scattered throughout the area. So the I think probably the most famous is Dighton Rock. So Dighton Rock was found in the water. It has since been removed from the water and is on display in like a little mini museum. Dighton Rock has like runes and carvings and faces that are carved into this rock that nobody can decipher. So there's three prevailing theories. They think that perhaps there's Native American heritage on it and certain things. It's like Native Americans really didn't have like written. I, this may be ignorant, but I don't believe that a lot of the natives in this area had like written language. It's more like oral. So it's more like they had maybe seen patterns that they had seen throughout the area and faces that were carved in the rock, potentially in the 19th century. Maybe the Phoenicians, Norse, or Portuguese. So that's also important because this area, specifically in the southeastern part of the Bridgewater Triangle, is a huge Portuguese area.
It's the highest population of Portuguese in the country.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
Honestly, Dighton Rock's pretty cool.
Dighton Rock is also a glacial rock. So, like, it's been here for tens of thousands of years. So, if what scientists are starting to think is true is that before the Ice Age, 9,000 years ago, or 11,000 years ago, whatever, there was another, like, human civilization, like, it could be that.
Yeah, so that's actually a really important point, Josh. So they have evidence of things on Dighton Rock dating back 8,000 years, but like they cite Phoenician writing, American Indian writing, as well as Portuguese symbols in here. Another one that there was a profile rock. It has since been, I think it's been lost to erosion. But there was an outline of a face, like the side view of a face of a humanoid image in a rock in the
It's like a
area.
smaller version of the Man on the Mountain in New Hampshire, but, like, not on a rock cliff, just like a standalone rock.
There's multiple sightings of quote devil's footprints in multiple rocks inside of the Bridgewater Triangle. So devil's footprints are essentially like if you see an embedded footprint in some sort of stone. So I think it's in Germany. There's a church where there's a stone that looks like there's a foot that's been smashed into it, and the legend was that the devil commissioned somebody to build the church, and he's like, "You're going to build this church without any windows," and the architect built the church so that from the point of view of the devil you wouldn't see any windows, but if you went into the church there were windows, and when the devil noticed that there were windows he stomped his foot and disappeared. So there's a couple of things inside the Bridgewater Triangle where there's like quote footprints in rocks. One of the creepiest was Solitude Rock. So Solitude Rock was found because they were searching for missing persons and found her body. So in 1916, there was a search party that set out to find Evelyn Packard, who had drowned inside of the Bridgewater Triangle, and that's when the search party actually found Solitude Rock. And on Solitude Rock, there is a poem inscribed in it, and I didn't write down what the poem was. I've read it multiple times, and I tried to decipher what it meant. But I had seen things on Solitude Rock that it's also called Suicide Rock.
Yeah.
So take that for what you want.
I have the inscription. It says, "All ye who in future days walk by Nuckatesset stream, love not him who hummed his lay, cheerful to the parting beam, but the beauty that he wooed in this quiet solitude. It's Solitude Stone. Bridgewater Triangle, first thing that comes up.
I think they did eventually attribute this to a poet in the 1800s.
Yeah, 1852.
This wasn't something that was advertised. Like, this wasn't something people knew about. Like, they only found this because they were searching for a missing persons that they had turned up dead, and her body was found near this, which, I don't know, it's a little creepy.
This etching is really well done.
Yeah.
Like,
apparently the guy who carved it was a minister in Bridgewater.
And just didn't tell anybody about it.
Yeah, well, the relation to Bridgewater Triangle is that this girl, Evelyn Packard, who went missing, she went missing because she kind of got like crazed by her experiences in Bridgewater's Triangle. So like whether it was sightings that she was seeing or the hauntings that happened here, which was in the 1910s or whatever, was probably way more prevalent, like the idea of like being haunted and all that stuff. Like whatever happened, she went crazy. It's like think of like someone who has like PTSD and like goes out, in a rowboat on the ocean and like gets lost forever. That's kind of what happened here. She went crazy from all of her experiences and she drowned, and that's the relation to Bridgewater Triangle.
Or it's called early 20th century undiagnosed mental illness.
There may have been quite a bit of that we're not seeing.
Now, there are a lot of bodies that have been found inside of the Bridgewater Triangle. Crime is another large tentacle of the Bridgewater Triangle, specifically in this like southeastern quadrant here, the Freetown State Forest. So the biggest one that I had seen was there was a confirmed satanic cult that was linked to a prostitution ring in Fall River, where at least 2 prostitutes were killed in the Freetown State Forest, potentially linked as being satanic sacrifices. Yeah. This is true. So there was an investigation that was done. They did convict I can't remember the guy's name, but it was like the pimp and one of the other prostitutes. This was a thing. Like, there was a group of people that were practicing Satanism that used the Freetown State Forest as kind of like their getaway, that did murder people in the Freetown State Forest. Another thing inside of the Freetown Fall River State Forest is dens and decrepit, like, little cabins, for lack of a better word. So like when I was looking this up, I started thinking about the foundations behind Harris Drive, like just finding all the creepy old foundations of houses and stuff that are left behind in this area because of how old and how long this area has been settled. There's still evidence of this in the Freetown State Forest, where people like had dug things into the side of the hill and reinforced it with logs. Now, it's unconfirmed. Like, there is like physical evidence that was inside of these dens where you could potentially say like this was being used for satanic activity, but I don't think any sort of prosecution ever came about it. They did attribute like a decrepit cabin to this pimp that was like kind of the leader of the satanic cult, but that was only attributed to him based on like circumstantial evidence. Like, law enforcement never came out and said like this was where he was. It was more like people around the area being like, oh, this must be the satanic cult place, but that is another, like I said, another tentacle of the Bridgewater Triangle is actual crime. They did find a woman who was murdered. They found her body tied to a tree inside of that area. They did find the guy and prosecute him for that.
I think they prosecuted her dad on that one.
I don't remember. But it's just one of those things that was that's where, again, my hackles went up a little bit. it's all in that little quadrant too. And I don't know if it's just because you're talking about the Fall River area, where it's a rather heavily populated area. It's always been more of a depressed kind of area. So whether or not that's a demographic where there's more crime, I really don't know, right? But the Freetown State Forest does hold some lore as being an area for a hotbed of crime.
Well, or is it because it's like a port area? Like the only thing I know about Fall River is that's where we had to bring our office chairs to send them to Africa.
That's so specific.
So where there's port area, there could be also illicit things being brought,
I think
bodies.
I think it's also right between the triangle of Taunton, Fall River, and Providence. Like East Providence is literally right there. So I think you probably have some seedy shit coming into Massachusetts from Rhode Island in that aspect as well.
Yeah, Rhode Island, keep your shit out of here. What are you guys doing?
Get out of here. There's someone who's still alive who was convicted of the cult murders.
What was the name?
Robin.
Do we
Murphy.
get him as a guest on this, or what?
Do we have that? Do we have that kind of money in this podcast to get her as a guest?
No, I don't have any
I think
money.
we have enough. We definitely have enough clout and pull that we could do it. So let's make it happen, boys.
Yeah, apparently this girl was like there during one of the murders. She was 17. She's doesn't even give her age anymore. But there's a picture of her. She looks old.
Yeah, this was, I think, in the late 70s or 80s or something. So we're talking, at least 40 years ago.
Yeah.
To wrap this up, I had kind of my own thoughts as I was watching this. One of the main researchers of the Bridgewater Triangle was Chris Pittman, and he had a quote that says, "Over the years, kind of taken a different view of it, and now I think maybe it's just that. In our 21st century lives, we're kind of divorced from the natural world around us in a lot of ways, and going into the Freetown State Forest and going into the wilderness of the Hockomock Swamp, that something inside us responds to that. Maybe in a way that harkens back to our Stone Age ancestors, and maybe that's what ties it all together." This was a much more beautiful and eloquent way of putting what my thoughts were, was these fucking dorks just haven't spent a lot of time in the woods. I don't want to come across as arrogant, but I'm going to. I've spent a lot of my childhood hunting in Massachusetts. It was like my favorite thing to do. And I was in the woods in Massachusetts, not inside the Bridgewater Triangle, but in the woods in Massachusetts, in the dark, in the early morning, in the late evening, sitting in a tree stand, sitting in ground blinds. I didn't see anything fucking weird. You know what I mean? I saw one thing that made my blood go absolutely cold, where my mind actually started racing a little bit. It's an afternoon hunt, so I got in there probably like 1, 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Now it's, twilight, and I will admit, when you're in the woods, when the darkness starts coming in and the woods just start getting smaller and smaller and smaller, it's a weird feeling. It's a little bizarre, and especially when that flat light starts coming in, where your eyes are having a hard time adjusting, your mind will play tricks on you. So I swear that I saw a humanoid figure. It looked like it was also in a tree stand. Turn around. I saw like a head and shoulders turn around, look at me, and turn back and put its back up against a tree, and it disappeared forever. I know logically that there was fucking nothing there. You know what I mean?
Puck wedgie.
Nah, man, puck wedgies are only 2 to 4 feet tall.
But I know logically that this is my brain fucking with me, because the light is getting really weird and it's starting to get like dark and it's hard to see and you're strained. And it's windy, so things are moving. Like it will play tricks on your mind. So this is where I was saying, like, these dorks haven't spent a lot of time in the woods. Yes, if you are going out into the Hockomock Swamp in nighttime on a ghost hunt because people do that. You already have this preconceived notion in your mind, like, oh, ghosts, we're in the ghost section, right?
And if you're looking for it,
Confirmation bias, right?
We could test this right now. Josh can go out there, live stream, and we can all be witness.
I ain't going out and shit. I got swamps behind my house with coyotes.
Big dogs.
There's shit out in the woods. You're gonna see stuff. And especially in the evening, especially in the dark. Like, there is shit out there. Whether or not it's Bigfoot or a Pukwudgie or the Mansfield Mystery Cat, I don't know. But there's shit out there that you don't want to come across. And I have a hard time believing in, especially like Bigfoot, in an area like in Taunton where there's a Home Depot next to a Residence Inn, you know? Like, we're not talking about northern Idaho where there's nothing around. We're talking about 495, but there is something about this area of southeastern Massachusetts that is a little bizarre. And where I chalk that up to is this area has been inhabited essentially since English settlers have come here, right? So this is a long, continuously inhabited area. It's like the Bermuda Triangle, where you've just had people here since the early mid 1600s. There's gonna be stories. There's gonna be weird stuff that people have seen. There's gonna be things that people can't explain, and especially in that alarmist culture of the 1600 Puritan society. We're talking King Philip's War in 1675. We are, what, 18 years removed from the Salem witch trials?
Yeah. This area is rural. Once you get south of Bridgewater, and if you don't take Fall River into account, Dighton, Rehoboth, Seekonk, Berkeley, everything south of Taunton, it's all super rural. You'll drive down main roads and go past houses that don't have driveways. They're just dirt driveways. We're talking about people who live in the woods, who live in these weird communities. It's just different.
Makes for a good story and a good podcast.
I don't hope so. I was so excited that you guys all jumped on this one, because I, honest to God, kept a very open mind when I was looking this one up, because I thought you guys would find this kind of fun and entertaining and provide some pretty funny commentary. Plus, we all grew up around here, right? Before we wrap this up here, let's do a little bit of plugs. So, I don't know what all you guys got going on, but this is the Press Gang Podcast, and we are joined by Sailboat of Sailboat Supplies. So you want to give us a little plug for Sailboat Supplies here?
Oh yeah, dude! Check it out. The social medias for Sailboat Supplies for all of your sneaker-related needs, Pokemon-related needs, and all sorts of wild and crazy shenanigans on a regular basis.
I'm sure that my mom and my aunt, who are the only two listeners of this podcast, will be all over that.
I think they want some custom. They want some custom sole swaps, and I think they need some new golf cleats, right?
So I've heard. So yeah, hit me up for your custom golf cleats for shizzle.